There is not Israel.
You want peace?
You don't play with me?
What? What are you talking?
What are you talking about? This is Israel? This is Palestine. Shut your mouth. Fuck Israel. There is no Israel. There is no Israel. There is Palestine.
Excuse me. Hello.
Excuse me. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Shut up.
You're going to take your medication.
Shut up.
Give us
Palestine is free. Palestine is free. Not Israel.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about manners. The man, he walked up to a man, insulted him, and there was a screaming in his face for what? He didn't even ask him a question. He didn't ask him a question. He just assumed. And then he was being rude to other people. I don't know.
Jesus is from Palestine. He's come for you. You but that one.
No, I'm just using a chair.
Why you put Israel in front?
I don't know you.
Yeah. Why you want this?
You came in to tell me to sit down.
Why? Why? Tell him why. Tell him why.
No, I was talking to that guy.
Yes, tell him.
Go. Why you put that one?
I'm just sit down. Is that alright with you? Who are you?
This is for you.
Jesus was born in Bethlehem, which is the land of Israel.
No, Palestine.
My friend, please, check your mouth, please.
Check your mouth. Ask Google.
Only Palestine.
Palestine, no Israel.
Promised to Abraham and his
Fuck you, Israel.
descendants.
There is Palestine.
Moses and his descendants.
Shut up your mouth, Obama.
Your book came from a man who got it from an angel. Christians got their book from God himself that spoke to man himself. So Muhammad is his own false prophet. Muhammad was prophesied in the Bible. Yes, he was, but not from where you think he was prophesied. He was prophesied by Jesus himself. There will become many false prophets in the end times, which is now. Muhammad, how did Muhammad die though? We know how he died.
How did Jesus die?
Muhammad was poisoned by a woman, a Jewish woman, who would have loved to have this flag around her neck. Her poor family was murdered by Muhammad and his raiders.
There is no Israel.
Israel exists because God wills it to exist. The only reason why Israel is back in the land now is because it was prophesied thousands of years ago. Israel will be called back to the land that it was promised. Now earlier on, I had a few guys talk to me about what miracle did Jesus give. I'll read it to you. This is from Matthew 12, from verse 83 to 38. Then some of the scribes and the Pharisees said to him, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." But he answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation craves a sign, and no sign will be given to them except the sign of Jonah the prophet." Many people misunderstand the point of the sign of Jonah. People say because Jonah didn't die, but Jesus did die, that there's no correlation. But from your Quran, you don't believe Jesus died anyway. You believe that a man went in Jesus' place, so you just contradict yourself anyway. So I will read from Jonah itself. Jonah's prayer to the Lord. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God from the stomach of the fish. And he said, I called out my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I called for help from the depth of Sheol. Where did Jesus go when he died? He first went to Sheol. Sheol is not hell. That is a mistranslation. Sheol is also Hades. Sheol is the Jewish word that means a place where the Lord will be. And Hades is not a person like the Greek mythology. Hades is a place. So Jonah was in the depth of the fish, which went down to the depths of the earth, symbolizing Sheol. He didn't die. That is part of the miracle, but the miracle itself is that Jonah came back from the depths of Sheol, which was basically mirroring and shadowing the resurrection of Jesus. That's why he said, I will give you the sign of Jonah.
I have a question.
1 second. You heard my voice, for you threw me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the currents flowed around me. All your breakers and waves passed over me. So I said, I have been cast out of your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again towards your holy temple. Water encompassed me to the point of death. So, he said, to the point of death, he was nearly dead, but the Lord preserved him not to die. It's just like when Jesus went into the grave. His body died, but his spirit went to Sheol. The deep followed around me, seaweed was wrapped around my head. I descended to the base of the mountains. The earth with its bars was around me forever. But you have brought up my life from the pit. The Lord gave Jonah his life back. Jonah disobeyed God. He did not go where God wanted him to go. So he disciplined him to make way for the sign and to shadow of what Jesus was going to do.
If you want to ask a question, you ask him.
He said stop. Excuse me, I want to question fast.
1 second.
I need to go first.
Whilst I was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my power came to
Excuse me, I need to ask questions.
to your holy temple.
Hello?
Those who are followers of the worthless idols abandon their faithfulness, but I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving, that which I have vowed I will pay. Salvation is from the Lord. Then the Lord commanded to the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land.
How does it say King Jesus and King is Charles?
It says correct.
This is Speaker's Caller. It's Cam or simple way.
How is King Charles and here says King Jesus?
Are you saying how are they the same?
Yeah, it's just European.
So King Charles, even though he isn't my king, he commands over the land where I live. He's not my king. Jesus is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. His kingdom is not on this earth. The person who collectively commands this earth is Satan. This is his domain. Jesus said whilst he was here, this is not my kingdom.
Charles Darwin is the truth and the life.
Yes.
How do you learn?
Just just one Lord, because there is loads of false lords. There's loads of false gods. Loads of false gods and loads of false lords. But Jesus is the one true Lord, the one true King, and the one true God. That is what it means. Understand? So let me go back to.
Did you just say at the end, Jesus said, "This is not my kingdom"? Is that what you said?
Yes, this world that we have now, this is not his kingdom. The Roman, what was the Roman
Son.
How is that not his kingdom? Well, I mean, in accordance to you.
because Jesus is the King of heaven.
So who's the king of heaven?
Satan. This world is fallen. In the garden, Jesus was the king. And then when Adam and Eve was cast down and out of the garden, and sin entered the world was corrupt. This world needs to be cleansed. So when Jesus comes back as the conquering king, when he first came through Mary, when he was born, he came as a suffering servant. And you say, well, why didn't he say that he was God? He came to show the way to the Father. He submitted to the Father, even though he could have used his powers. That's why when Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, the devil tried to tempt him. He said, use your power. You have the power to turn this stone into bread. But he said, no, you shall depend on the Lord your God. He tried to tempt him to use his power. He took him to the top of a high building and said...
But did you see how that didn't answer any of the question? Like, I asked whose kingdom is it, and then you tried to explain me the story of what happened on earth between the Father and the King. Coming back to that, so the king of this earth is Satan.
Yes. So King Charles, he is the king of the United Kingdom. Putin, he's the king, the prime minister, or whatever he is, the president of Russia. Sorry, not Ukraine, Russia. And then you've got like Mohammed bin Salman, he's the leader of his country. And Satan, he's the leader of all of them.
But wouldn't you want your Lord to be the leader or the creator of this world, and the king of this world? Wouldn't you want your Lord to be the king of that?
So, at the end, when he comes back, he came first as a suffering servant. When he comes back for the second time, which is the final time, he will come as the conquering king, how the Jews wanted him to come the first time. They weren't ready for him. Just like the Jews won't be ready for him again. So he's going to come as the conquering king.
But why does he have to get the conquering attributes later on? Like, if you're the king, right, if you're the Lord, if you're the God, then you'll have that all the time anyways.
Yes. That's why he came as a suffering servant. He came as a suffering servant to take the punishment for sin. And that's how his body died. He took the punishment for sin. So certain things have to happen for him to come back.
Do you feel like at a certain level there's some confusion as to his position as the Lord or as someone that came to the earth, or is there a confusion in your mind between these, right?
No, it's like the Old Testament when it prophesies about Jesus. It says that he will come twice and he will have two separate missions to do, if you will. That's why when he was on the cross and he said it was finished, his first coming was finished. His job the first time wasn't to come as the king. It was to come to save those who wanted to be saved.
But if he's the Lord, right, according to yourself, am I correct?
Yes.
How does he determine how he's going to come and his position to come? And I'll explain this to you why. It's because as a Muslim, you know this, we believe in Jesus as well, right?
In Jesus, yeah.
In Jesus as a prophet, just like Muhammad is a prophet, right? And to us, he's a prophet because he's a messenger to come and reveal God's word, correct? But you're giving him God-like attributes and saying he chose to come as a messenger, then he chose to be the God and go to the heaven. and now he's going to choose to come back, right? Do you see how that's a bit? It sort of confuses his position of who he actually is. Like for us, he was a messenger. He came, revealed his message, and he was Muslim.
That's because the Quran, even though it copied a lot of what was existing at the time, it copied a lot from the Tanakh, from the Old Testament, which is part of the Tanakh and the law, and then it copied what scriptures was about at the time from the Christians.
It's not necessarily copied. I just want to correct you.
They didn't put in the prophecies of the Old Testament. That's why they didn't.
I want to correct one thing. It didn't necessarily copy it. What it is if there's a message by God to humanity, it needs to be one anyway. So if there's been a message sent to the Christians and then sent to the Muslims and then sent to the Jews, that in its original essence was the same anyways. That's what we believe. Now the difference lies here is where in the Quran has never been changed, right? So as we have it today is how as it's always been memorized and has always been recited. This is not the case with the Bible and the Torah.
That's what we've been taught to believe. But if you watch,
Prove it to me.
have you heard of Dr. J. Smith? Dr. J. Smith.
Like you tell me in your own words, like you.
So from the research that I've done, the Quran in its earlier stages, it was just the letters. They didn't have the dots and the vowels above or below the letters. It was just the letters. And then later on, they added the dots and the vowels because they couldn't make any sense of it. Because through further research, if you just get that text without the dots and the vowels, because Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic, they're all Semitic languages, they're all quite similar, especially Arabic and Aramaic. Once you put that back into what it was before Muslims became a nation, in the area where they were, Aramaic was a very dominant language. Obviously in Israel it was Hebrew, and then
Just come back to the relevant points. How has it changed?
yes.
So give me the references. Like I'll give you an example. I went to a museum today, right? I went to the British Museum earlier today. Actually, I went there yesterday. I went to another Elizabeth and something. So it was V&A, Victor and Albert and something. I forget which one. I was walking past it and I went. And in that museum, I saw a Quran from 700 AD. That was taken from Cairo, and I read it, right? I read it exactly how it is, and it's a verse that I already know, so I was able to read it the way it was. And the Prophet passed away in 623, and that's in your museum over here. So I can go and read the Quran and see that verse is exactly the same. So I'm coming back to your point. How was it changed? How has any verse, any ayah,
if you go throughout the world, there are at least 30 different Arabic Qurans. People have come down with Hatu and Tash and Dr. J. Smith. They came down with 30 different Arabic Qurans. There was the Wash and what's the Cairo edition called? It's the Hafs, thank you very much. The Hafs and the Wash, over 4,000 differences, not just words. Thank you for being anti-Semitic. I love Israel, thank you.
Don't worry about it.
So, Dr. J. Smith and his team, they have looked through loads, but specifically the Wash and the Hafs, because they're the main Qurans that are used by Muslims around the world. At least 4,000 differences. There's small differences, and then there's differences that add up to it changes the doctrine in some places.
I've been to 30 countries, and each of these countries I take an effort to go to the mosque, any mosque, right, and read the Quran and have a chat. I would urge you also, if you ever have a chance, to find any Quran anywhere and find a difference from it anywhere. It doesn't exist.
She went to Morocco, she went to Turkey, she went to all these places. She went to the bookshop, she found, I think it was like 5 or 6 at the time, and then she's like, why do these have different names? She opened them, she went to popular verses, and some of them were different. So then
It wouldn't be different. Look, I'm telling you as a Muslim, and this is for you to check yourself as well. I have never ever read a Quran separate from another Quran. It doesn't exist, and we, as an overall, speak to any Muslim and ask them, and you'll get the answer. But there is one thing that you might argue on, and that's this: we have something called the tafsir, which is what is this verse trying to actually say, right? And some Qur'ans on the side they'll put the verse, and then they'll put the, let's say, the Turkish or the Egyptian understanding of that verse. Now there are certain words that some scholars, when they converted it, the words are a bit different, but that doesn't mean the Arabic letters were different. So the Arabic letters in all the Qur'ans are the same, but it would just be a different wording.
The Qur'ans that they have, it's purely Arabic. There's no translation to English. It's just Arabic against Arabic. If you'd like to actually look at the video on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know this because we read it every day, right? So like, it would be easy for me to
like
test this.
In Islam, they tell you not to question. Question is looked down upon. It's haram. Yes, to question Islam.
No, it's actually encouraged. It's actually one of our verses encourages the questioning. Find your Lord. That's what it says to you. Speak and try to discover your Lord. And as a Muslim, born in a Muslim family, it was the number one thing that, because there's certain things, right? You're not allowed to eat pork, for example. You're not allowed to drink alcohol. You're not allowed to do drugs. And so a young Muslim would go up to his father and say, all right, blah, 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 what is this? When I asked my father, I said, why can't I drink, right? Or why can't I smoke weed or do this? He didn't say, this is your book, you can't do it. That's not how it's taught down to us. My dad said, for example, drugs, they alter the state of consciousness of your mind, so this is not recommended. And this is an explained verse from the Quran anyway. It alters the state of your consciousness of your mind. So it's not specifically weed. It might be a new drug that's invented tomorrow. But the whole point is the fact that it alters the state of the consciousness of your mind. And that's what the Quran says, refrain from them. Does that make sense? It's not encouraged. We're all encouraged to discover it.
Has your family been in England for a long time?
I'm not from the UK. I just came here for 2 days.
Where is your family from?
We're originally Turkish, but I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I live in Melbourne.
In polemics, there's an idea that there's a Western Islam and an Eastern Islam.
That's not true.
And there is an ex-Muslim that we know, Dr. Al-Fadi. He's an ex-Muslim. He was born in Saudi Arabia. He was 45 minutes to an hour away from Mecca. And he says, because he now lives in America, because he can't go back to his home country because he'll be killed for being an apostate. So he now lives in America. I can't remember which state, but it's in America.
By the way, that's not true.